James, Neuron is focused on combining DLT and Internet of Things or IoT. Can you tell us about your initial drone tracking use case that captured a lot of attention early on, and then maybe how Neuron is now expanding that IoT scope into some new areas?
Yeah, sure. We've been doing tons of work on the aviation use case, and it's really our focus at the moment. We've got two huge pilot projects. One of them is at Cranfield Airport. It's called Project Blueprint. We actually had our launch event last week. We had 120 executives turn up. We had people within government departments there. We had 4 members of the regulatory team there, the Civil Aviation Authority. We even had Google Wing there watching us and commenting, asking us some great questions. So there was some really good attendance from some top companies, big aerospace companies and big technology companies, really interested in what we're doing. And I think we're now getting consensus within industry that this is the right solution, and having these ground-based sensor networks is really what is needed. The regulator even said we need a solution like this. This is the future of the solution. So we kind of got that validation now from the market, from the regulator, from government, that this is the right approach to be taking. And so really what we're doing at the moment is we're running a bunch of trials, I guess, and basically making sure that proving to the regulator that each of these different steps have been passed. So we're working alongside the regulator in a sandbox environment with them. So they're basically giving us free help and support with our go-to-market. And then once we've achieved that, we can then start the commercialization and expansion of these networks at scale. But we need to go and get things right. So, the regulator wants to know it's safe. They want to know it's secure. They want to know it's appropriate for an aviation environment. And so we're ticking off those boxes first. But we're not that far. We're probably within the next 12 months at the point where we've ticked those boxes out off, and we're then able to start scaling. And the other project we've got is actually down in Cornwall. So quite interesting. The National Health Service and Royal Mail have problems delivering things to the small islands off the shore of Cornwall. And it basically takes ages to go and get anything out there. But what a few of the drone delivery companies are doing is setting up drone operations down there to be able to deliver things across to the islands. And that basically means that we're deploying sensor networks down there, integrating with those drone delivery partners, and then providing a service, drone delivery services for those end users. But Royal Mail and NHS are huge customers. I think the NHS is actually the largest employer on the planet, so they're huge. They want to use them for things like time critical drugs, so chemotherapy, cancer drugs, delivery of blood, samples, things like this. And Royal Mail, well, they deliver your mail. So there's lots of deliveries that are needed there.
So, and we had talked before about something that reminded me a lot of what the Helium network is doing. Can you go into that a bit?
Yeah, sure. So we kind of, this whole started around the aviation use case, and we quickly realized that actually this problem exists in other industries as well. It's the whole problem of, where you've got lots of devices out there in the real world, and then lots of people who need to use them. So lots of services that need to be provided. And in essence, what we did is there's lots of drone applications that need the sensor data, for example. But this occurs in other things, so electric vehicle charging, weather sensing, air quality sensing, even down to things like Wi-Fi hotspots. You've got lots of devices, lots of users. And so really what we did is abstracted the problem and said, well, what other things could we do apart from aviation? And the core thing there is discovery. So how do we discover devices? How does an application discover a device? How does it connect to them? And then why would the device want to do that in the first place? Well, it wants to be paid. So the settlement layer as well. So you have discovery, connectivity, and settlement are the 3 kind of core services a part of that. And we're having to develop them for the aviation use case. So we're kind of abstracting that and saying, well, why wouldn't we just provide that for other devices as well? And so that's really what Neuron has become, is an IoT layer. There's things such as Helium. What Helium does is it basically provides a low bandwidth Wi-Fi link, long range, into these sort of edge devices. So that could be temperature sensors in fields and things like this. Now, the thing with that, I think Helium had a little bit of an issue around their supply and demand were in different locations. The demand for LoRaWAN, which is basically what their devices provide as a connectivity service, it basically is useful in rural areas where you can't get 4G or 5G. It's in remote locations, but all of their devices are in cities. You've kind of got this disparity between supply and demand where they're actually in the opposite locations. And so I think this is why they've switched to the sort of 5G model, which is in cities, which is where a lot of their users will be. So I think Helium are very much focused on a specific problem, which is connectivity at the moment. We're focused at the moment on aviation, but what we're looking to do is abstracting that to other device types. And we've developed a really nice model for doing so. Neuron wants to be the internet of things rather than the intranet of things. Each of these different use cases, how do you bring those all together into a single vision for the community? And that's really what the big idea is for Neuron.
So now you mentioned how they have the devices on Helium. Are you going to have similar devices that facilitate what you're trying to build? And is there other ways that people are going to be able to get involved with what you're trying to build?
Yeah, so in terms of types of device that we're going to integrate, at first it's the aircraft tracking sensors. But the first step really is, how do we build the backhaul for this? How do we go and get that data into the network? And how do we create the chain of security from transistors right the way through to the network itself? In terms of the middle piece, like really what we're trying to do here is to create a peer-to-peer network. It's very much peer-to-peer in terms of device to application. The Neuron bit is really just the piece which creates the match between those two elements and does the settlement layer. In terms of like where we want to go next with this, I'm not entirely sure exactly what that roadmap is going to look like. We've got probably a good 12-month roadmap very much secured down. But what we want to be able to do is to give the community a chance to start helping us to build this network out. We've got these two big sandbox environments in Cranfield and down in Cornwall. But what we need to start doing is building up this kind of backhaul on a global level and start introducing these aviation sensors, even if it's at a low density at first, to start giving us some of the data that we need to be able to prove the use case out. So yes, there will be opportunities for the community. We've got some very firm plans on what they will be. I'm not quite sure we're ready yet to release that, but watch this space, and within the next couple of months, you'll be hearing from us.
That's fair enough, and you have to start someplace. I think this aviation use case is a great place to start. After all, Amazon started as just a book retailer, but they had broad visions for where they were going to go from there, and that's exactly what it sounds like you have as well. So you started off, of course, building on Hedera, and that partnership has continued. Now you're getting some exposure of these big executives, these big enterprises. How has the continued use of Hedera been for you? And what is the reception like from some of these executives you're talking about?
Yeah, so one of the things that we've found is that the traditional industry space and the Web3 space are like oil and water a little bit. So if you start going up to one of these big aerospace companies and start talking crypto with them, like you'll lose them within seconds. So what you have to do is to separate the models out. And this is how we've done it, by having the device and application and doing the peer-to-peer between device and application, because the app can be a traditional SaaS model. There's no problem with the app being a SaaS model, and it can interact with the end users in a SaaS environment with fiat money and etc. But the device itself, these are generally going to be people within the Web3 space, or maybe even the aviation space if they're installing aviation sensors. So we think there's really a huge community of aviation people who want to basically take part in building networks themselves. So we actually think we can bring those into the Hedera community as well. In terms of how we operate, like we're currently building the token models out with our accelerator that we're working with at the moment. And it's going to probably be a mixture between token and a stable coin. And there's some reasons for that. But the key part is that we need to go and get that model right so that those industry partners will be able to interact with us in a way that works. Watch the space on that. We're still in development, but there's some exciting stuff going to be coming out.
No, you don't have to worry about that. We're going to be paying really close attention to what you're doing. So let's broaden our lens here a little bit. In the long term, how do you see IoT and DLT interacting to change the landscape across industries?
So I think IoT and DLT are perfectly matched for each other, to be honest. Internet of Things is the idea of an object out there in the real world being able to be connected by a third party. And really, the essence of that is peer-to-peer. And what was Bitcoin? Peer-to-peer digital cash. IoT is peer-to-peer Web3 is peer-to-peer. Like they match up perfectly with each other. We haven't really seen we have seen a few real world use cases in terms of like physical objects out there working and interacting with Web3 environments, but most of it's being sort of online, digital, financial kind of worlds with Web3. I think over the next few years, we're going to start seeing Web3 in our everyday lives. There's going to be real world objects interacting with Web3 environments rather than just your bank account or wallet address or on your some NFTs on your computer. So I think this is going to be the big transition, and IoT I think is the way that's going to happen. What we need to see though is a transition away from all of these siloed use cases to something more internet level. As I kind of keep using the analogy, we're not trying to build an intranet of things, we're trying to build an internet of things. And so how do you build that internet in a way that is open, transparent, and so anyone can get involved with that? That's the key, and that's whoever solves that problem. Hopefully it's us, but whoever can solve that problem is going to be a huge change, I think, for not just the Web3 space, but also the IoT space, which has largely been confined to sort of use case based IoT rather than an actual IoT environment or an ecosystem that we really need.
James, I absolutely love your vision. I can't wait to see all this come together. Thank you for coming on today and telling us about it. And please come back to give us updates as things progress.
Perfect. Great to see you, Brandon. And we'll speak again soon.
I'm now posting these interviews of Hedera builders independently to my channel. The community, influencers, and media outlets are free to use this content to spread the word on what's being built on Hedera. Once they're all uploaded, you'll be able to go to my channel and search for whatever topic or team you're interested in to find more information. Or you'll be able to get the most recent Hedera news by watching the latest HBAR Weekly update. So check them out.